The following Stealing the Mind Bible Conference presentation is by Mike Lindell and is titled Facing Giants, Part 1. Thanks to the generosity of our supporters, you can go to compass.org and stream any Compass video for free on your phone, tablet, computer, or digital TV.
My story goes back to when I was 7 years old. This is my picture when I was 7 years old, and my mom and dad divorced when I was at that age, and back then divorces weren't common. It was like 1969. I was put into another school and I was the only kid from a divorced family. So it was I wouldn't talk to people or I would show off. It was one or the other. And I'm not blaming everything that happened in my life on divorce, but they did do a study in a prison in Kansas. How many people or how many felons in there, they're felons, they did a percentage, like how many of the felons that were in there, their parents planned their wedding, got married, had the child, and were still married while that felon was in the prison. 0%. As you go up to gross misdemeanors and stuff, it goes up, more families have stayed together. It just shows you how God and the family unit is so important. But anyway, I was put into this new school, and I would either show off, I'm going to kind of take a timeline through my book. Well, I would either show off to fit in, or I just felt like I didn't fit in. And, I'd go, a couple of guys were going to beat me up once on the bus. I go, watch me, hey guys, watch me climb out this bus window. We're going 40 miles an hour, and I climbed through it, jumped out the bus window. They're going, whoa. And, but this went on, and I had, but I got two jobs. Probably the last jobs I had where wasn't an entrepreneur, but I worked at a drive-in movie theater and a grocery store. And I remember the grocery store, the owners of the grocery store, I kept getting fired, and the union would get my job back. But I was getting fired over things because I didn't like their rules. I didn't like things going on. He goes, Mike, if you should get your own company someday if you don't like the way things are. But one of the things I didn't like is they had, I got fired, the last time I got fired, it was a friend of mine's friend that died, and I was pretty close to him, and I couldn't go to the funeral because he wasn't close enough to me. It wasn't a family member, right? And so like in My Pillow, if someone dies at My Pillow, somebody that you're close to, we don't question who it is, and you stay out, and we pay you while you're out grieving as long as it takes. So those were one of the things from back then. And, but anyway, so these two things. Then I graduated from high school, and I went to the University of Minnesota for 1 quarter and dropped out. And at my 5-year reunion, I'd already been fired at the grocery store, and at the 5-year reunion, all of the graduating, my reunion was there from a graduating class, and most of them had finished college, started families, or had advanced themselves in their jobs. Well, I hadn't done anything really. And but I took over that that class reunion, took over the class reunion. And I started telling what I had done the last 5 years. I go, yeah, I owed the mafia $20,000. They came to collect on that with guns, and I went skydiving on my motorcycle, fell asleep, crashed the motorcycle, got back up and went down, and my parachute didn't open. And I'm telling them all these things that are just, they're going, what? Well, like I say, but I got home that night. And I laid in bed, and I was like in tears, and I'm going deep down. I wanted what they had. Everything that happened to me, it was like a self-worth thing, right? And I remember at that point, I was already an addict. I turned into an addict to alcohol and gambling beyond anything, and then I was introduced to cocaine, but with addicts and. It'll be mass pain. It'll give you false courage and all this. So for me, it was addicts aren't just addicts that are in the street, which I've been there. It doesn't matter how many forks you eat with. Addiction can affect everybody. Okay, and especially like we're at now, where people are feeling hopeless, flooded with fentanyl coming across the border, right? Well, anyway, I prayed to God. I said, I just wanted a family. I wanted grandchildren. I was like just stowed down. Every day was like, when you come down off these things. And God granted me that. He granted me that. And here's a family and 4 kids. And you go up to, I was always started to be an entrepreneur when I was in treatment. It was always problem solution. My sister popped a waterbed in an apartment building once, and I became a carpet cleaner, right? And for 2 years, made a real successful business. This lunch wagon business, I was actually in treatment. Every time I'd get DWIs in the 80s, we'd go to treatment, and they'd, you'd tell your little story, and just to get your license back and not go to jail. And I was at treatment one time, and inpatient treatment that time, and I went down in the middle of the night, and I never would talk to people. It was like, for me, it was always like being in an elevator, and because I found out later it was fear of rejection. Well, you don't get rejected if you don't talk, and so anyway, this guy's sitting there, and he goes, I said, what do you do? I don't know, it was kind of uneasy because there was nothing on TV. I went to a commercial or something. We're both just sitting there, and somehow it came up, and he says, well, I used to do lunch wagons, where you open the sides and you serve food, and he was from California, so I called up my buddy, and I said, hey, come up with $14,000 for our first truck, and I'm going to make us millionaires. And I said, I'll be out of here in 2 weeks. So I quick got out of there in a couple of weeks, and we created this lunch wagon business. And then, so I was always an entrepreneur, but I had this parallel track with this addiction. And then, so then I got in the bar business. I bought a bar on a contract for deed. And by the way, everything I did, no the banks would ever give me money. It was always borrowing or doing a contract for deed, creative ways to finance stuff, right? Well, I had the bar for 13 years, and it was not a good place for an addict, but it was devastating when I had to sell that bar. It was if you read about it, I had fought for law changes in Minnesota, and I stood my ground, and by doing that, I lost pretty much everything. And years later, I got calls from all the restaurants and bars in Minnesota, a lot of them going, we know you lost everything, but thanks for standing up. And everything I fought for came true in Minnesota at that time. But at that time, it seemed so devastating, okay? When I had to, it was like a family we had then. Well, now I look back, of course, that was meant to be. That was a godsend to get out of there. So when you look back and you see all the things that happened, you can go back in time and go, that had to happen. That was meant to be. That was meant to be. But through all that time, I had over 14 near-death experiences. I'd be in Mexico on a family vacation, and they're going to cut my head off the cartel and things like that. And the guy's cutting my head up. He goes, he's ready to cut my head. I go, I'm not going to buy this sword. And the other guy goes, Senor, he doesn't want to sell you a sword. He wants to cut off your head. And I go, what's wrong with you? But they're going, what's wrong with this guy's loco? He wants to, but it was just deflection. What did I do when I got out of that? I went and did another line of cocaine, through all that, I would always tell my friends, I would get out of stuff but I would tell my friends after the bar would close, I said, I read Revelation in the Bible, and I would tell them all about God and what I read, and they would get saved and quit everything. And the next day, my other friends are going, will you quit talking like that? We're losing friends, But I would be, always trying to convince myself. And every time I would get into a situation, I'd be praying to God, even though I wasn't saved. I'd be praying, God, get me out of this. And in fact, I hear prayers all over our country now. People come up, Mike, I prayed that Donald Trump got in and he didn't get in, or I prayed this and I prayed that and it didn't come to fruition. I said, well, those are reactionary prayers, and they might not be God's will. I said, I used to do that all the time in jail. And I said, well, where's God's will? And they said, I said, God's will is in the Word. And if you stay in the Word, then you can be proactive in prayer, and they line up beautifully, And this is the strength I use every day. Okay, and then, I got up to, after I sold that bar, by then I was into crack cocaine, and but about that time, so I had 2 parallel tracks. It took me a year. I had this dream of a pillow, and I had problems. It was problem solution. I wanted something you could adjust, and I tried every pillow out there, and here I had to learn how to sew. I didn't know how to thread a bobbin. I guess they thread themselves, stuff like that. And my son and I are reading the manual, going, okay, this is so frustrating. Well, threading the bobbin's not even in there because anybody would know that it threads itself. But my one son and I, we would tear foam and it'd be flying all around the neighborhood, and we tried over 93 different kinds of foam. But all this process, it was like leading 2 separate lives. You had this here, and then you had the crack addiction and everything here. Well, when I finally got the pillow done, this is I went to box stores. The first one actually was a Bed Bath & Beyond. I go to the Bed Bath & Beyond. I go walking in there. I go, I got the best pillow ever. I said, how many do you want? How many do you want? And their manager, I go, I need to see the manager. And they go, sir, you need to leave or we're calling the cops. It was like, because I'm all excited. Like, this guy that's nuts, he comes in here. So I was turned down by all the box stores, just like now. It kind of full circle. And anyway, someone said, well, Mike, why don't you do a kiosk? I said, how do you spell that? And well, we went to do the kiosk, and I was married with 4 little kids at that time, and we went to do this kiosk, but I couldn't talk to people. So the kiosk, you go around it, you got a booth, and you're standing out like this, right? And I had made my own, I had went and got crayons at a store and basically made my own thing, family owned and operated. And I remember it said chiropractic recommended. And my wife at the time, she goes, you can't put that. And I go, what do you mean? Our chiropractor, I gave him a pillow, he loves it. Who would have known years later I get sued for $1 million because someone said I was a sleep expert. And in California, you got to go to school for 4 years to be a sleep expert. I thought all I had to do was stay up for 20 years on cocaine, you become a sleep expert. But anyway, so we did this kiosk. I was only there one time, I think, that whole month. We borrowed money to do the kiosk. We lost a ton of money. And but when I was there, this guy came up to me. He says, he buys a pillow, and it was so cool selling, all these pillows. That would have been probably one of the first ones I sold. And he said, you got a business card? I said, no. I said, I'm all out. I didn't have a business card. I go, here's my number. I give him my number. Well, that January, now we had to borrow money I borrowed money from an ex-bookie to buy Christmas presents for the kids because we were out. But I didn't give up. And coming into January, I get a call from the one guy that had that phone number. And he goes, yeah. He said, is this the guy that invented this pillow in Minnesota? He said, and I said, yeah. And he goes, well, it changed my life. He said, this is incredible. He said, I run the Minneapolis Home and Garden Show. Would you like a spot in there? I'm going, yeah, if I can give you a check, But, so anyway, I went into the Home and Garden Show, and I get in there, and I built my booth different. I put a table in front of me because once again I couldn't talk to people. It was you guys. It would be like I needed the drugs or whatever for the courage, whatever, because it's deep down a fear of rejection. Maybe I didn't know at that time, but I put a table in front of me and put this stuff behind me, and that day there was like 18 people bought pillows. I'm going, this is so cool. Now remember, if I left the booth, if I went out, back then I smoked too, if I went out to smoke a cigarette or something, someone said, hey, you got a light? I say, no, I got to get back in there. I wouldn't even want to talk to them. It was that much of a inner, I couldn't talk to strangers. I couldn't talk to people. I didn't like it. I just thought I didn't like small talk. That was my excuse. Back in the bar business, when I had the bars, if I was sober and you came into my bar and there was no one else in the bar, it wasn't like, hey, I'm your local bartender. I'd say, let me know if you need anything. And I'd be over faking the dust bottles and go, please leave, please leave. That's because, so anyway, these people come in, 18 of these pillows. Well, the next day, they all paid to come back into that show. The odds of that, it's never happened any other show I ever did. They all paid to come back in and came up and said, this pillow, it's awesome, this pillow is great. And it made me feel so good inside that I had helped them. It wasn't even about the money. It was like it made me feel so good. And And then I got kind of hooked on helping people feel good, right? But I started doing shows then, and for the next, or years and years. Right? But by 2007, things collapsed. We were actually labeling the pillows in our living room, and they would cut off. My wife at the time left, and it was lights out. They turned out lost their power in our house, and basically it was done. And then we got divorced, and then you go through 2007 into 2008, and they. I must be nervous. I never get nervous anymore. No. But we get into 2008, and I lost another house, lost both houses. I bought another one that I was losing, and completely broke. And this is like in February of 2008, and I had a warrant out for my arrest. And I'm downtown Minneapolis, right where all the fires were, where they burnt up all my friends' stuff that now I'd found the Lord, by the way. Well, anyway, I'm down there, and I come out of the bedroom, and there's three of the biggest drug dealers that all of them have different parts of Minneapolis, and they're all three standing there. Now, they knew of each other, but they had never met. And I come out, and I go, what's going on? And they go, you've been up for 14 days, you're going to bed, and we're cutting you off. And I go, what is this, an intervention? They go, call it whatever you want, Mike. And I said, I get all upset. I go, what? And then he just up and leaves. He was just disgusted. He leaves. Now, Joe's from the projects of Chicago, and he went down to the street. I find this later on, and got the word out. You don't sell anything to this guy. And he got the word out in the street. Now, the other guy, Ty, he sits there. He says, how much crack do you have left? And I showed him what I had left. And he's sitting in the chair, and now it was 7 o'clock at night. It gets to be 2 o'clock in the morning, and I'm carpet farming. And if anybody here on crack, you would know what that is, or anybody watching. I'm already carpet farming. I'm getting all these, scraping the pipe. I look over, and he's sound asleep. And I went down the streets of Minneapolis, and I went everywhere. There's every city in this country in that time of the night, you can get crack anywhere or drugs. And nobody would sell to me. And I'm very, very resourceful. And I went all the way out. I'm offering $100 for $20 worth. It didn't matter. It was like a shutout. I came back upstairs, all defeated. He said, man, how'd that work out for you? And he goes, and this is what he said, you've been telling us for years that you're going to quit someday, and you're going to come back and help us all out of this drug world we're living in. And because I would always preach to them about God, even though I didn't have God, right? And I was their hope. And he said, and you've been telling us you're going to write a book that's going to help people. And here, give me your phone. I want to take a picture of you so you can put that in that book. And here's the picture he took that night. And that's on the cover of my book. And they, by the way, 2 of them work for me now, and they're born-again Christians. But now I'm going to tell part of the story that I haven't told, I think maybe once or twice. So I went to bed that night, and I slept for 2 days, but I had to remember I said I had that warrant, right? And I wake up on the second day, and I had to deliver something to my brother, or my pillow would be gone forever. And one of it was these law label things that, and then another thing from Canada. If we don't do it that day, if it doesn't get done, it's over. And so I had a chance going from Minneapolis all the way out to Chaska, where I lived, all the way to Carver, Minnesota. It's about a half-hour drive. And remember, I still had this warrant out. So I had a chance. That's why I was hiding out down there in the first place. So I go all the way out and get to our hometown in Carver. And at that time, my pillow was working out of a little schoolhouse, but there's only one way in, and there's only one way out. And I go up there to get in, and here I pass Larry the cop, the town cop. I go, you gotta be kidding. I head up the hill, and I grab those papers, and I get out. Now Larry's already swung around. He's like Barney Fife reaching for his gun, Mike, stop. I go, and I did stop. I go, Larry, these papers have to get to my brother. I said, it has something to do with the future, something to do with God. Millions of people are going to be affected. And I said, you're going to arrest me anyway. You can arrest me anyway. And I said, and next Tuesday, I promise I'll be found innocent. And if I'm not, you can arrest me anytime, and I promise I'll have cocaine on me. And he looks at me and he goes, and I'd never been caught with cocaine ever, but so I said this to him, and he goes, go get your brother. Or he said, call your brother. Make a long story short, my brother gets those papers, and 9 years go by. Okay, I'm going to fast forward, then I'm going to bring you back. 9 years go by, and it was like 2000, I want to say 17 or 16, somewhere in there. And I hadn't seen Larry the cop since that day. Okay, and by the way, that following Tuesday, I was found innocent. And but 9 years went by. I didn't see Larry. And here I'm going. I had a choice to go to this big event in Texas with there, or to my hometown. They were having a parade. And it was all for it was going to throw pillows out to the little kids. So I said, no, I'm going to go to this parade. So I get back to my hometown, and we're just lining up for the parade, and I hear, rrr, 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 and here comes Larry the cop, like the old days, right? And he pulls up, and he goes, Mike. I go, Larry. He goes, do you remember what I did for the people? And because now he knew what back then, this is before all the election stuff, but I was on a pretty good thing. I was going around the country helping addicts and preaching in churches, so he already knew that. And he goes, and I said, yes, I do, Larry. And he goes, he says, am I going to be in that book? I said, absolutely. And I said, we took this picture, right? And I turned to Larry and I go, Larry, do you remember what I said to you back then? He quoted me word for word. It would have something to do with God. And he goes, and I said, well, why would you believe something like that? And he goes, Mike, you were always so transparent, and you just said it like it was. And he said, it's kind of scared me because I looked in your eyes, and you really believed it. And I said, well, what do I have to lose? I got him trapped anyway, right? But he did that. It was just, what I'm saying, there were divine appointments back then that where God protected me and protected me and protected me and protected me. Then you got into 2008, later into 2008, and a couple things had to happen. I had my son and I came back from a hunting trip, and by then we had lost the house, and he was 17, his brother was 18, the other two were older, and the divorce was long gone. But he was living with me, and I thought I was hiding my addictions from him. And we got back from the hunting, and he stood in the driveway, and his lips just quivered, and he goes, I want to go with Charlie. And I sat there, and I broke my heart. I just said, yeah, I'm trying to hide it. I said, yeah, that's fine. And for him even to have to ask me just broke me up inside. And that hit home so hard, but it was all the way then to December, and I had very few worldly possessions left. In fact, the house was empty. I'm staring at the ceiling, this house out in the woods. And my friend had been, for 3 years prior, he was kind of like my equal. And I heard he had found the Lord, and I hadn't seen him in 3 years, and he had quit. And that was the only thing I could really compare myself to, if you knew the way he was. Well, he came in out of the blue. I go, Dick. He goes, Mike. And he goes, where are you from? What's going on? He goes, what's going on with you? And he said, the Lord led me here. He said, I said, well, Dick, I got a few questions for you. I said, first question I asked him, I said, is it boring? And he looked at me, and he goes, no, man, it ain't boring. And to this day, I don't know if I meant finding Jesus or quitting addiction, right? And he works for me too. We just talked about this the other day. Well, then I didn't quit that day, but about a month later, it was on January 16th of 2009, I knew that day I couldn't go one day further, and it was like that drive-in movie theater. In my book, I put it like this, the second feature of my life. And you got the first feature and the second feature. The second feature would be everything that would happen if I quit everything. And I knew that after that day, it was not going to be an option anymore. My sister had told me the whole year, she said, you have a great calling on your life. And she said, God's going to pick someone else. You're going to, you can't just keep standing in front of semis. And she was kind of right, because I knew, she's telling me this, I got this calling. I went through 14-year death experience, parachutes not open, caught under the ice, and couldn't find my way up. And just different things, burned, it didn't matter. And I'm going, so during that year, I'm going, that sounds horrible that I'll quit everything, got to go, help other people when I'm, without my addiction. I thought, well, I can wait around, why don't I wait around if God's picked me for this? So, but I kept waiting and waiting, or procrastinating would be the word. But that day I knew I couldn't go a day further. So I prayed to God, and I said, God, okay, here's the deal. This is the deal. I said, I will quit everything forever for good, but I want, when I'll do this big platform calling you have, this, whatever this is, and I really thought it was going to be to help people get off drugs, right, and stuff. Well, I said, but here's what I want. I want to wake up in the morning and never have the desire again for any of this, any of the drugs, alcohol, whatever. And so I went to bed that night, and I woke up in the next morning, and I go, something's different. I looked in the mirror, and I didn't even look too bad for all those years of drugs, right? I'm going, wow. Well, the desire was gone for good, okay? And now my sister, she, of course, I go move in with my sister then, and she's hiding baking soda and spoons and everything else, It's all stuff you make cocaine or crack with, right? And I go, I'm over it. And she goes, I'm not kidding, she's hiding everything. And she goes, well, at that time, my company, my pillow at that time was down to nothing. I had ignored shows. People I had broke bread with had betrayed me. The last thing I had ever taken was my shotgun that I hunted with all my life, and I pawned it to actually make this guy his pillows, and that he never paid me for. And these were the guys that had went out and stole everything, right? And I find this out on the second day that they went around and got all my shows, and then I called up my fabric guy, and his name was Bob, and he goes, well, Mike, they need money now for it. And before they'd always get it on credit, and then I knew they were in it. He was in on it too, and he goes, I said, well, what do you mean? He goes, well, they need $30,000. He knew I didn't have 30 cents, and I said, well, can they give me till some time? He goes, can they give me till next Friday? He goes, well, I'll check. Probably went like this. Yeah, they said you can have next Friday till at 1 o'clock. It was 1 o'clock the following Friday. And so my sister, she goes, well, just pray for favor, and all this. And I go, what's favor? She tells me. So I go, well, what am I going to do I need to get 30 grand. So I went back to this bar, and this guy had told me a couple weeks earlier, this guy had said, hey, if you ever need anything, my friends are they run this company. They're kind of like Mavericks, and they might want to help you out or whatever if you ever need anything. I said, no, I didn't. At that time, I said, I don't want to ask anybody for anything. I don't do that. And, I mean, that's another thing. It's very hard for me to ask anybody for anything. Well, anyway, I go back to that bar, and I go, hey, there was a guy with a cowboy hat in here last week. And I said, his name was Bob. His name was Bob, too. And the guy goes, yeah, that's Bob the cowboy. He said he only comes in here once a month, so he'll be in here next month. And I'm going, oh. At that exact moment in time, Bob walked into that bar. Now, he walks into the bar, and I go, hey, do you know those guys? And he never offered me a beer. By the way, when I quit, no one's ever offered me a drink or a drug since. I mean, it's been ever. Which I thought that was kind of strange, but I guess everybody wanted me to quit. And anyway, this Bob, I tell him, and I go, can you get me an appointment with these guys? And he calls them up, and he says, they can meet you next Friday at 10 o'clock. Now, remember, I needed the 30 grand for the criminal at 1 o'clock, right? So I checked it off my list. Well, that's, because I just thought he walks in. I would recognize divine things back then and even now. So the odds of that, I use mathematical odds to prove that God exists. Okay, and here's what I do. If you have a 1 in a million or a 1 in a trillion or this is impossible, when you add them together and consider it a miracle, okay? I mean, this is what, so for me, the odds of him being there was so, I'm going, well, I'm going to get this money because it's, this, otherwise he wouldn't walk through the door, I would actually take these miracles for granted back then, right? These little mini miracles. And so the week goes by, and I go walking into this place. Now, I was so afraid of people that wore ties and suits back then, I can't even tell you. Anybody that ate with more than 2 forks scared me, okay? And but so I walked into there with a T-shirt on and 3 jars of foam. I don't even know if I had my pillow with or pillow with. I think I was out because I didn't have the fabric I needed to get things going again. And I walked in there, there was 8 of them. There was a CIO, a CIEIO, a CFO, a CEO. I didn't even know what C's meant back then. And they're all wearing suits. So I sit down and I started telling them about, yes, I invented this pillow. I've been doing shows. I said, and I go on and on. I said, and I used to be a crack addict. I quit crack, cocaine. I want to borrow 30 grand. I'll pay you back 40 grand within 3 months. And CFO goes, well, when did you quit crack? I said, last Thursday. And he goes, and the guy, 4 of them get up and go, where's the cameras? This is like Shark Tank, right? They're going, and for that reason, we're out. And they leave the room. And I go, well, now there's 4 of you, 1, 2, 3, 4. I said, you all put in $7,500. And I said, I'll pay you back this. You all get 10 grand back. And they go, it was almost like somebody zapped him. And the guy goes, well, if you do it, I'll do it. I think this is a God thing. He goes, okay, let's do it. And he goes, well, give him a contract. He goes, he doesn't have anything, So then just have him write an IOU on a piece of paper. I wrote an IOU, right, signed it. Then he goes, he went to get the check, and I said, remember I told you it's got to be cash. I'm meeting him in 45 or an hour. And the guy, so they went to the safe. They only had like 10 grand. They had to go to the bank, get $100 bills. And they had to do this all within like a half hour. I'm going, hurry, Bob's. The other guys, criminals, a half hour away. So I walked out of there with $30,000 cash, and they never checked my ID. And the reason I knew that, I didn't have a driver's license. And I never thought of that when I went there, right? But anyway, so I head downtown to meet this Bob. And Bob he calls me and he says, I said, Bob, he goes, did you have the money? I said, not on me. And I put it over on the seat over here, right? So I wasn't lying. I said, not on me. I said, but these guys, they can help us in the future, Bob. I said, I have to show them that that the fabric was there, and I have to show them that I would have made it by 1 o'clock and all this stuff. And he goes, what? And he goes, I just need to have a picture of the fabric quick, right? So he's kind of reluctant, but he couldn't say no because he's part of this little crime thing going on, and to take my company. So I head down there, and I get to Bob, and there's like 10 minutes left, and it's out in his shed, and he goes here, and he opens it up to take the picture. Well, then I had the 30 grand in my pocket. I pull it out. I go, Bob, it's a miracle. Look at, I got the money. And he's going, and I'm hugging him, and he's going, what am I going to do? What am I going to tell the guys, right? So we had to tell the other crooks, hey, I sold him the fabric. You did what? Well, anyway, I just want to take, because that was just a mini miracle in itself. And then things, I'll skip over all the stuff that kept happening, but one of the things that 2 months later, I actually went to my church, and it's Living Word Church in Minnesota. They had a treatment center called Living Free, which, by the way, my son just went there, and he fell in the Lord with Kendra's help. That was 2 weeks ago, by the way. So anyway, I walked into this treatment center the day before to meet the counselor. And now remember, I had quit 2 months prior, but I wanted to find out why I was an addict in the first place, And this seemed like it was going to be different. I felt the Lord tell me to go there. I had been to every kind of treatment center known to man, all these secular centers that don't work. Oh, you lost your children don't love you. Your wife says you spent all your money. And we already know that we're addicts. You just shame us and it makes it worse. You're waiting to get out and something happened and then you relapse. And anyway, so I go with this guy and I meet him at the door, and I said, I quit 2 months ago, crack cocaine, gambling, drinking, everything. And I said, I'm going to have a book someday. I have this pillow. It's going to be a platform for something really big. I'm going to have this movie, all this, I'm telling him all these things, which every part of it has come to fruition. But I'm telling him then as I'm seeing this stuff, And he went home and told his wife, he said, you should see what came through the door, higher than a kite. You know? And he's actually told these stories at many churches, but I did go to that treatment center, and they planted a lot of seeds there. The first thing I said is how much drugs I had done, and they go, we don't care what you've done. And he said, tell us about your father. And I go, what does my father have to do with anything? And we started talking about back there, the fatherlessness, the divorce, and deep-seated wounds that I had that I didn't know about. I had never seen a treatment center like this, but I stayed there, and it planted seeds. Now, I didn't get that personal relationship with Jesus yet, but they did plant a lot of seeds. So now I'm going to fast forward. So during the next 2 years, I spent getting my pillow back. We were getting our shows back because these guys had taken it with another pillow and used my technology. It had stolen. I didn't have money to fight them, but I got it back. And one of the things I never did that God protected during all those years I was on crack or cocaine and selling the pillow, he protected my word. When I told those guys I would be there at a show, I was there, and I didn't mix the two. It was like God protected me from that. So I had my word that all these show people that I never broke, which was amazing. That's a miracle. Anybody that's an addict will tell you that's pretty hard to keep your word, and especially on crack. But with crack was different. I was smart enough to know, don't even sign up for the show because you can't trust yourself. And it was a little different. Well, anyway, we spent 2 years and doing the shows, and finally in the summer of 2011, I told my friends and family, I said, you guys, the box stores won't take us or nothing. I said, I couldn't get anywhere other than the shows. I said, let's do an infomercial. We'll all pool our money. Well, I didn't know infomercials don't work. They only work on the front end in Japan. Okay, seriously, I didn't know this. It's to brand to go into the box stores. And you get cheap the branding. Nobody makes money on the front end, okay? Well, I didn't know that. Nobody told me that. They did. A few people said, oh, it's gonna fail, but I'm going, okay, well, we pooled our money, and I remember filming it in August of 2011. We get in there to film it. Remember, I still had this horrible feeling, couldn't talk in front of two people at the same time. It was even worse now that I was off drugs, if I didn't know you. And so we go to do our reads the night before. They bring in this Hollywood producer, and we start in our reads, just me and this gal that I did shows with, and I had a dream of having a real live audience. So that was all set up for the next day. We're doing our reads, and the guy texts the other guy, said, this is the worst guy I've ever seen. He will never make it on TV. And the guy texts him back, he's paying you. He said he's paying, just go with it. Well, the next day, I walked out for this infomercial like this, and I go, and then the pillow, I was petrified. It took an hour for one line. And finally I said, can we get rid of the teleprompter, bring in a table like I did at the shows, my security blanket. By the way, I can't do this without this now. And so we did this in front of the live audience, and it went off, and we got through it. Well, that infomercial, that aired October 7th of 2011. I was living in another sister's basement, and it was surreal. When this came on, I'm going, wow, and it just seemed so divine at the time. And we had 10 employees, it was mostly my kids. 40 days later, we had 500 employees. We were the #1 infomercial in the world by December 26th of 2011. Now, over the next 6 months, and they go, Mike, you need to be CEO. I go, I just want to make pillows. I really didn't know what a CEO's responsibilities were, right? They go, we need a corporate attorney. I go, that sounds horrible. And we need an HR department. That sounds even worse. We're going to make pillows and sell them, people, help the people. Well, over the next 6 months, I remember going to my friend. I called my friend up from the ATM in January. I said, do you realize that the ATMs, they don't go to the 7th digit? He goes, no, Mike, I didn't know that. And for me, it was surreal when we had these guys had given me credit. The patented foam company said they gave me a month worth of credit because nobody believed them. I told them all, we're going to go from $200,000 a year to $200 million a year. We're going to do it overnight. And they didn't believe this, so they just gave us a month's credit. Well, that is actually a lot of money, that this credit rolls. Then another company on fabric, he had to order this fabric that was printed fabric just on my word. I had nothing for it, nothing. And anyway, 6 months we take in $100 million, okay? And I woke up in May of that year in tears, and I finally, all of a sudden, I look and we're $6 million in debt, and there's no way out. And I'm praying, and I'm going, God, one of those reactionary prayers again, God, please get me out of this. Whatever I did wrong, I'll do it right this time. I didn't even know what went wrong. And I started digging into 2012, then it rolled into 2013, and we were pulling stuff back in 2012 to kind of cripple through. I pulled everything back, and I learned from 2012 all the betrayal. Some of the stuff we didn't find out till 14, but all these things that had happened where I had farmed this out and farmed this out, I didn't know. They say growing too fast. That wasn't even the beginning of the problems. There was so much deep-rooted betrayal and things done wrong that you trusted other companies. Some I trusted on a handshake. That was as bad as a written one. And greed takes a terrible thing when you start talking those numbers. And but I will say this, though. If 2012 hadn't happened, I wouldn't be here right now where I'm at, because if that hadn't happened, I learned from it. It was that decimation, and to rebuild and to fix things and to change things and pray about things to do right from there. 83 million My Pillows later. And I do the same comparison if 2020 election hadn't happened, and you're going to hear this later. The 2020 election will go down as the most important in history by far, and I'm going to tell you that after I get through this. So we get up to 2014, and I'm within 2 days of going under My Pillow. And I met Kendra in the front row here, and she, my wife now, and if anyone read the book, they're always saying, whatever happened to Kendra? Did you get married? Yeah, we got married last year, everybody. But when she came into my life, she started having this discernment of here, and she goes, we got to pray. We have to pray about this and pray about that and pray. I mean, it was every day, praying and praying and praying. And I got to do some stuff here. We got to, I got stuff to do. We can't just pray. And I'm going, she still does that, everybody. But like I say, within 2 days of going under, and we're praying, but then I realized she has something. I could tell she had something I didn't have. She had this personal relationship with Jesus Christ. And I'm going, and you all seen me on TV with my cross. And I would always, just like I talked to my friends back in the day, I always wanted to be that person. In fact, when I was the only call center, and it was just me taking calls, I would literally sit up, and if someone called that was a non-believer, I would tell them all about Jesus, what I read in the Bible. There, take that, and they'd be saved. Take that now, you have Jesus, And then the Christians would call in and say, how dare you use that cross to sell pillows? And I'd say, what's your email? And I would send them a picture of me in the crack house with the cross on, right? I bore my cross all my life. I wanted to be that person, right? And I'm going to tell you one funny story here about this. Back when I was doing, this is in my book too, and I haven't told this in quite a while, but it's really amazing back then. So I'm sitting, and that house that I told you when I was all by myself, and I went to this Channel 6, this little Channel 6 public access station in Minneapolis one day, and she had seen me at shows. And I went down there. I was down there to buy drugs. I was down to Minneapolis to buy cocaine. And she happened to call me up, and she said, Mike, could you stop by the studio? I've always wanted you to stop by. I go, yeah, I can stop by, because it was an hour before I was going to get the drugs. And so I stop in there, and she's showing me around. She goes, can you come on TV right now? I go, absolutely not. I said, I can in an hour, because I had to go get cocaine, so I have the courage, right? And she goes, no, I need you on right now. And we argued. And so I went on with this guy. And like I say, it was just a little interview. And anyone that watched that interview that were my friends or people that watched it, what were you on, drugs? Remember, I wasn't on drugs because I hadn't got them yet. The people that knew me said, you didn't have any drugs, did you? Right? So this lady, this nice Christian lady, she would play that interview in the middle of the night, every night, and I would get sales from it. I'll never forget. Well, I was usually up at that time anyway, still doing lines of cocaine. And one fateful night in 2008, this was actually before the intervention by the drug dealers, my phone number was on there, just my cell phone, and I was all by myself out at that place, and I was online I'd always go to this site called The Devil's Candy. It was a Christian guy that did this, and I would, because he had been where I'd been, and I'm going, you're just trying, how to get off this, right? It was pretty ironic. Well, anyway, my phone rang at 8 o'clock, or no, it was about 6:30 that night. And I'm going, wow, that's weird, that this phone's ringing and it was for sale. This lady gets on, she goes, are you that guy on TV on Channel 6? I said, yeah. And she goes, well, I don't want to buy a pillow, but I want to pray with you. And I said, okay. And so she's praying and she's going on and on. She goes, God's got a big calling for you and something to do with God. And she's praying and I'm muting her and doing lines of cocaine and coming up, but I'm listening to her, and she prayed for like 45 minutes to an hour, and she's just going on and you have a big calling, and God's got plans, and all this, and I'm going, okay. So she hangs up. 10:30, another caller calls in. This lady owns a boutique. I know these people now, by the way. This lady owns a boutique in Minneapolis, and she said the same thing. It was like, yeah, she said, you're the guy on Channel 6? I said, yeah. And she said, well, I don't want to, she goes, I have one of your pillows, but I called. God's telling me to call and pray with you. And I said, okay, and so you guys, nothing surprised me. I didn't think it was one of my friends playing a joke, because stuff like that, weird things happen to me all the time I couldn't explain, okay? So she starts praying, and she went on and on and on, and I mean, it was 2 hours. I'm doing, I'd go to the bathroom, have it on mute, come back, and do another line. But it was, but I'm listening, I'm taking in the prayers, but it was kind of the same thing. God told me to call and pray with you. Well, 3 a.m, this guy calls up and he goes, this guy goes, are you that guy on TV? And he goes, I said, yeah. He goes, well, I don't believe in God, but I keep having these dreams where God told me to call you up and tell you what you're doing is really important. And he says, I hope my dreams stop now, you blankety blank. And he slams the phone down. And now I'm going, and now the last call was at 7 o'clock in the morning. 7 o'clock in the morning, I answer the phone. I go, you don't want to buy a pillow, you want to pray. She goes, how do you? I go, it seems to be the thing tonight. So anyway, I tell that because things like that happened to me, I'm going, I knew the odds of that are trillions to 1. That I knew that God had to be behind it. But like I say, I was always one of these, show me more, God, show me more, show me more. And so anyway, I knew Kendra had something I didn't have, but I wasn't going to let on, but we kept praying the power of prayer. There was a miracle that happened at the end of 2014, and we just exploded, right? I mean, my pillow was, it was a miracle. And, well, then God started showing me things that it was like, you want to say about showing you more. And this is whoops, and there's when I met Kendra. And, sorry, honey, I almost missed that picture. But, so here, I'm going to build up to this, okay? I'm going to build up to the, whoops, let's see here. Before I show you that, I'm going to tell you, because in 2015, in the spring of 2015, I had a dream that I would be with Donald Trump in this room. It was a very vivid dream. And by then I would get these God dreams, and kind of all my life. And anyway, I go, why would I want to be with Donald Trump? I had never watched The Apprentice. I knew, I knew the name back when I was a card counter, reading the book. I mean, I was a Trump his casino in Atlantic City once, where I have quite a story there. But I'm going, when I go, why do I want to meet this guy? And or why would I meet this guy, right? And a month later, when he came down that escalator, I'm going, wow, that's weird. Here he's running for president, but I had that dream. Now, we went over to Israel and that fall. Now, you got to realize, I didn't know anything about politics. I had never voted in my life. I was better things to do, like crack cocaine, right? And I didn't know a Democrat from a liberal to a conservative to a Republican. I didn't know a filibuster from a milibuster. I knew nothing. The closest I ever came to even paying attention was when Jesse Ventura ran for governor of Minnesota. And anyway, and then I didn't vote, though. I just thought it was pretty cool. The underdog won, right? And so I had this dream. Well, then as we went over to Israel, there was miracles over there. I'm just seeing, there was a couple things that happened there. I'm seeing all this proof. I know the dead's there. We went to one place with the Dead Sea Scrolls, right? It says, don't take pictures. I'm over there. Oh, are you kidding me? This is Jesus, And, but it made me, it was like, God started pouring things on me that wouldn't happen. You talk about odds, where these incredible odds. Well, then as we roll into 16, and we go into 16, and I still had not, he's running then and running, and I kept seeing this dream of seeing this picture of us in this office. Well, I'm on this plane going to film church people out in California, and I get up in the plane, and it was in like July of 2016, and I'm in the bulkhead, and I got a new phone, and I had set it for it dings if you got an email. And I hadn't turned that off. It was like a note, alert. And I had this magazine about Donald Trump, or this it's kind of like a life story or something. And I remember I bought it, and I get up to the plane. I'm in the bulkhead, and this foreigner sitting here, and I open up and I shut it, and I said, God, I want to know if what do I have to do with Donald Trump? This is like July of 16. I said, I need to know right now. And at that moment in time, my phone dinged. Mike, this is Donald Trump. Will you meet me in New York City at Trump Tower? I'm going, God. And I'm crying. And not because I'm going to meet Donald Trump, because I was answered in real time by God. And there's the flight attendant's going, are you okay? I go, yes, it's a miracle. This guy's over here going, talking a language I couldn't understand. It'll be okay. And but that hit me. Then we go out to, Kendra and I flew out on August 12th, on a Friday, and August 15th my meeting was scheduled at 10 a.m. with him. And we get out there, and there was, we go into a booth at a restaurant. First we went to a church, and the guy comes up he comes up to us, he goes, you guys have something so important on coming up, and we tell him what it is, and he prays about it. And then we go to a restaurant, and these two, were they nuns? I think they were nuns. And they came up and jumped in our booth, come in and sit on you. And she did. I don't even know if she knew I was the pillow guy, right? She just goes, you have something very important coming up, and we want to pray with you. And they're praying in the booth. And by this time, I'm going, everything's normal now, right? And so they're praying. And then the next day, things, you'll have to read the book on this part, is so the miracles that led up to that meeting. But I remember looking over Central Park at 3 o'clock in the morning, and the meeting is the next morning at 10 a.m. Kendra just went to her room, and I look out there and I just started crying. I go, God, why am I meeting him? What have I picked? I just knew it was going to be something very divine, and because the odds of this happening were just so bizarre, so I knew it was a God thing. And anyway, probably because I was up most of the night, it probably helped me. I wasn't so, nervous or hyper when I got up. But we went over there. I went over there to meet him, and they said, you're not going to meet him alone, and whatever you do, don't tell him you were a crack addict. And I'm going, okay. Well, things happened, and I ended up I walked into his office and it was just him and I. Okay, there was a lot we're going to skip that part, but it was divine. The things that happened to where I walk in, it's just him and I go walking up. I said, he goes, Mike, you always wear your cross on TV. Are you a Christian? I said, yes, Mr. Trump, and this is a divine appointment. But it was like this immediate, just like two people talking. And I remember him saying, you make your pillows here. I want to bring the manufacturing back. And he's just telling me all this. But there was no agenda. I'm going, he's asking an opinion of some crack addict from Minnesota. Then I finally went, I was an ex-crack addict. And I went like this, looking. And he goes, and I said, I'm going to have a network called the Lindell Recovery Network.org, everybody. It's there. It's free. It's online to help people, addicts, right? That's Lindell Recovery Network.org. Now he looked back at me and he said, you know what, I'm going to shut that board down. We're going to shut the drugs from coming in. And it was 40 minutes of this amazing conversation. And I go to leave there and I'm going, and I had met Rudy Giuliani the day before in divine appointment. And so I'm walking out of the office, and then Rudy came walking in, and he's singing the My Pillow jingle, for the best night's sleep. So what that did, then we all three sit down again, and that picture that I seen, which is right here, was taken. And I drew that picture a year and a half earlier, a year and a half earlier with the things behind it. And so that when that picture was taken, now I left his office. And Kendra and I went around, we talked to a lot of his employees. And every one of them said the same thing. Great man, great leader. And here was an interesting thing. Every one of them told about a personal experience that he had helped them out. Individually, never told, nobody knew about it. And then if you look at that 2016 election, not one employee came forward with any bad stuff against him because there wasn't any. And they tried to pay people to do this.
This has been Facing Giants Part 1, presented by Mike Lindell. Because of our awesome supporters, you can visit any of our Steel on Steel Bible studies that defend a literal translation of the Bible from Genesis 1 to Revelation 22 on the web at compass.org.